Hey,
Hey, Rex.
hey, that was good.
Hey, Rex is back.
Yes.
Nice job, Dave.
Thank you. And now Rex's work begins. If you can make me sound smarter than I am and make me look better than I look, appreciate that. And then you'll have earned that will take some serious work. So you'll have earned some big bucks if you can pull that off.
That second home of the Caymans, is that what he said?
It's
You
double
earned
Jeopardy. We're getting into real serious money now. I was going to ask, you mentioned commitment, and I hear that a lot. And I totally agree that the commitment is really what is the key to a stronger marriage. Is there anything that you think helps people stay committed or stay committed to their commitment?
Yeah, great question. I mentioned vows. It was interesting how often these couples that we interviewed would say something like, we have the same kind of problems that other people have. Yeah, we definitely have resources from our faith that's helpful. But what really makes a difference for us is that we take our vows seriously. If we didn't take our vows seriously that we made in front of God and, in a religious context, we would probably be divorced too. And so that idea that religious vows, because if all your relationship is just between two human beings, and hey, we were young and dumb, and we made a decision, and now we're having struggles and challenges, and I found someone else that I think is cuter or that I like more, whatever. If your only commitment is a human commitment that you made, this is one reason why cohabitating couples don't tend to last as long, because there has not yet been a serious vow made in the presence of God and usually a religious leader and often family and friends, a public declaration. And so one of our, the mothers of one of our respondents said that, my mom told me when we got married, now you have to listen to the words. You got to listen to those vows because they will matter. And if you'll listen to those words and then keep those vows that you make, you can weather anything. And that particular couple had to weather an awful lot of extremely difficult challenges.
Yeah, Liz, I think you mentioned something about, I think in a previous podcast where basically testing or more experience with relationships doesn't necessarily help, and that it's not cohabitating and then just treating it like not very seriously or really honoring the commitment to something greater. There is that focus again. Not honoring a commitment to something greater than yourself can be detrimental.
Kind of sliding into a live-in situation, right?
Yeah.
I think Dr. Stanley talks about versus a true commitment. We're committed. We're going to live together as just one step towards our marriage, for instance. That's different than those just like, well, I need a place and you got a place. So let's live together.
Let's make that place together. Yeah. Dave, would you say that religion kind of reinforces commitment or makes it greater and more serious?
Yeah, thank you for making that point. That I should have made that connection in my comments earlier. Absolutely, religion in a number of ways tends to strengthen people's commitments. Because look, we're all forgetful. We're all kind of likely to just want to go our own ways and kind of do what we think in the moment will make us happy. A lot of people talked about how belief in God and regular involvement in prayer and studying of their sacred texts and attending services reminded them of who they really are and reminded them that they're not only obligated to their partner, but to God and to the broader faith community and, of course, to their children, for those who have children. And so, there's lots of scriptural mentions of, being faithful and being, sort of enduring and being patient and long suffering. And so religion definitely bolsters commitment. Religious practices, when people take their faith seriously, they're more likely to do things like celebrate holidays, religious traditions together. And that this is very beautiful when people have regular opportunities to bring kind of God, faith, religion into their homes, into their relationships. It just adds a kind of a deeper dimension. It's not just about the human being sitting around this table. There's a loving God to whom we're accountable. Lots of people we interviewed talked about that they felt a sense of accountability to God for how they treated their partner. And for many felt that God brought them together in the first place. So many people talked about how they felt like it wasn't just an accident that they met each other or married each other, that there's sort of divine purpose and divine intention involved.
Providence.
Yeah, providence. And if you believe that the God of heaven helped you to find this person and wants you to stay together despite your challenges and difficulties and the inevitable ebbs and flows of a relationship, the ups and downs that every long-term relationship has, that absolutely
That's
helps.
powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Wow.
Yeah, that is interesting too. I get this sense too that I think a lot of people, like, even if you're religious or not, there's still relationships still have problems to overcome.
Definitely.
But that I think the religion really helps, like you say, reinforce the commitment.
Yeah. And two people that are highly committed to each other, to the marriage, to God, they can work through almost anything together. And most divorces are, the research of post-divorce research finds that most divorces occurred not because there was one of the big three, one of the three A's, abuse or adultery or addiction. It was just more they kind of grew apart and they, sort of fell out of love, and maybe they fell in love with someone else. And so most relationships, I think it's like 70% of relationships, end for reasons other than the sort of things that we would all say, yeah. I mean, again, you can still save a relationship even if abuse or adultery or addiction has been present. It's much harder and might be more dangerous for someone. So those are all considerations that have to be made. But anyway, so yeah, it's religion strengthens commitment, and commitment makes it possible to work through most things
and overcome challenges and issues and stuff like that. Right.
And by the way, one of the most difficult things that some marriages have to overcome is the grief and loss over the loss of a child, the death of a child, or the very significant disability in a child. Before I got into this American Families of Faith project, we were doing interviews with highly religious fathers of kids with special needs. And tragically, there's a very high divorce rate among couples where they lose a child or have a child with a very significant disability. It just really puts a tremendous burden on the marriage. And what the research shows is that in that particular situation where, the parents are dealing with a very difficult, something that no one would wish on anyone, the loss of a child or a child with very significant disabilities, that it is religious belief, religious commitment that tends to help those couples make it through even that unbelievably difficult challenge and burden. And the couples who sort of make it through and work through those difficult things, those who have a shared faith to turn to, or even if it's their own personal faith, it might be different. But God, religious values and beliefs and commitments can help people get through the most difficult things, including those real challenges with the child.
Why do you think that statistic is? Why is that a statistic? Like, I'm curious why. I have my own ideas, but why does that damage a marriage so bad of a child with disabilities or loss of a child?
Yeah, it's a great question. I remember going to conferences back when we were doing that research. I remember a conference on trisomy 18, trisomy 13, where parents had lost their child. Trisomy 13 is a chromosomal defect where children don't tend to live more than a year. And that issue of having all those hopes, all those expectations, all that desire for a child, and then to have a child taken away so soon through a disease or through an accident, it can leave people not knowing how to grieve together. There's something called incongruent grief, where often husbands and wives don't grieve in similar ways, and so they don't know how to help each other. And then they kind of get lost in their grief, and they might blame each other in some way, maybe not consciously, maybe not verbally, but there might be some sense of blame. Just looking at the other person reminds you of the loss of that child. I mean, you'd think that it would be the opposite, that it would bring couples very close together. And the good news is it does in many couples, but it tends to be that faith gives them the perspective and the meaning and the resources to be able to come together and transcend even that great loss. And often when men experience profound loss, they retreat into themselves, or they go off and become workaholics, or they self-medicate through addictions of various kind, and they don't know how to handle it, and the couple just sort of drifts apart. It's really, really sad.
Mm-hmm. Rex, you guys can keep going. I have to hop off. I've got a 2:00. So sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
Man, the hour went so fast, but I got to jump on another one.
Great to see you again, Dave. Good luck to you.
Yeah, Dave, thank you so much. It's been really helpful. We'll have Alexis reach out and let you know when this will come out. You can help us spread the word.
Great. Thank you.
I'm really I like what you're saying about how people grieve in different ways. And that's something I learned years and years ago is, people saying, oh, they can't feel that sorry. It's like, I remember reading into grief because my mom passed away in my 20s, and just how differently some of my family members responded to it, and learning that, yeah, people do grieve in different ways, and not to expect them to experience the grief the same way you do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard because in many ways we don't know how to talk about profound loss. And I'll say, especially we men don't know how to deal with that. We tend to deny, oh, no, I'm fine. No, I'm doing great. Thanks. And we dive into our work, we dive into our hobbies, or our, whatever, our drugs or distractions. And women are more likely to want to talk and share and kind of do it together. And many guys just, and frankly, for many men, there's a sense of shame around loss. Many feel somehow it was their fault. Like if they were a better man, if they were, especially religious men, especially Latter-day Saint men, often feel like, if I were better, more faithful, more righteous, a better priesthood holder, I could have saved that child. I could have, my blessing would have healed them, or this must be a punishment from God. So how people believe, how they interpret bad stuff happening, if they're already feeling some guilt or some shame, and then there's a significant loss, it's very likely going to lead to more shame. And then for men, the road between shame and anger and shame and addiction is a very short road. And then
very close, yeah.
Things tend to spiral downward from there.
Well, and I think for men, being emotional is almost a social stigma.
Yeah.
We're not encouraged to be emotional or express our feelings or feel our feelings when we're younger. And we develop a habit of just kind of suppressing and driving things down, as we get older. I wanted to ask, this last question was, how did you get into this? Like what was the catalyst that got you into this field?
So that's a great question. It's a long story, but I'll give you the short version of it. I converted to the LDS faith when I was 19, served a mission, and on my mission in New England, realized that, family really is important and faith really is important. And you get to spend time in hundreds of people's homes, maybe thousands of people's homes, but for sure hundreds of people's homes. And, sort of see how religion, and not just the LDS faith, but in my case, many Catholics, many evangelicals, many Jehovah's Witnesses, I got to see how their faith strengthened their family. And so that became an interest. And then when I came to BYU back in 1993, fathering was a big thing in this whole issue that you were talking about with men and their grief and not handling emotions well. And that was kind of the fathering movement was kind of big in the 90s. And I felt spiritually prompted to get involved in that. I heard an LDS apostle, James E. Faust, give a talk about turning the hearts of the children to the fathers and the fathers to the children. And it sort of hit me that I should try to do that kind of work. So I came and was able to start doing that research. And it's interesting. We interviewed these about 35 LDS dads of kids with special needs. We didn't ask them any questions at all about religion. We were kind of coming like from a social science perspective, because back in those days, like religion was the anti-tenure topic. If you tried to do religion, you're gonna belly flop badly. In fact, the first presentation that we made of our research, one of my colleagues said, "Well, Dave, this is really interesting stuff. It's too bad that it'll never be published." And that was a perfectly sound, assumption. We're very blessed, very fortunate that we've been able to that things have changed in the social sciences and our work. We'd interview these dads and they'd tell us about their spiritual experiences. And again, we didn't ask them, but they told us about dreams and visions and priesthood blessings. And one father talked about, his little preemie, born 2 months premature, putting his hands into the little incubator, in through the, where you get to put, and laying his hands on this little tiny baby's head and giving a blessing. And stories like, dads would tell stories like that. And it turns out that when even our hardcore kind of crusty social science, kind of anti-religious colleagues, when they would read those kind of stories, they're like, wow, I mean, I wish I had something like that could help me deal with my tough stuff. And then 9/11 hit, and there's a real interest in learning more about religion, especially Islam and Judaism. And so the timing was good. God was good. I realize you're not going to put this stuff on the podcast, so I think it's okay if I point, thank you, Jesus.
We've mentioned this sometimes, so it's not taboo. It's not a scarlet letter or anything.
Great. Anyway, and then the Lord has just been incredibly generous and gracious with us. Things have just gone far better than we could have possibly imagined, that the social sciences have opened up. And even though we're doing research, on religious families using qualitative methods, which is like two strikes against you in the soul, even today in the social sciences, like qualitative methods, religion, because the people that we interviewed were articulate and shared, profound feelings and experiences, people have been willing to, publish our stuff, and it's just been a great blessing.
That's incredible. Well, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
I'm going to cut it off, and we will talk a moment after this. But
okay.
This has been a very awesome interview and enlightening. Unless you had anything else to say, Liz?
I just think it was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a few minutes to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. When you hit the like button and leave a comment, your feedback helps us improve the show. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and connect with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and on Facebook at Stronger Marriage. Be sure to share with us what topics you want us to explore or what you loved about today's episode. If you want even more resources to improve your relationship connection, visit our website at strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producers Rex Polanis and Alexis Alcott and the team at Utah State University. And you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.